Hi, and welcome to our next unit called Relationships. Within this unit, we are going to study poetry. To help us understand poetry, we need to know some basic poetry elements. Pull out your composition notebook and start on a new fresh page for our poetry elements notes. Please understand that you're going to be graded on neatness or readability. Second of all, you're going to be graded on your concept map. In the center of your concept map, you should have the title called Poetry Elements. Off of the center title wheel, you need to have additional wheels coming off as you see here on the screen. You need to have form, speaker, sound, figurative language, and imagery. As we go through each of these poetry elements, you need to write down the definition and anything that you notice that's important. I would also recommend you include bold words. This is going to help you in understanding the poetry that we are going to study in this unit. If at any time that you need to pause or replay this video, please do so. The first element is form. When poets write their poetry, they use lines. The lines may or may not be in complete sentence format, and they do not always include punctuation marks. Lines can be in stanza form, which means that lines can be grouped into 2 lines per stanza, or there may be 4 lines per stanza. And in other cases, some poems, all the lines are just written and there's only 1 stanza. The structural form is a repeated pattern. And some poets, they write in free verse, which means there is no regular pattern. So if you take a look at this poem, If I Can Stop One Heart from Breaking by Emily Dickinson, we can see that she has 2 stanzas. In the first stanza, she has 4 lines, while in the second stanza, she has 3 lines. Within poems, there can be a rhyme scheme. A rhyme scheme is where you look at the last word of each line and you figure out what it rhymes with in the next following lines. So, if we take a look at the first line, we would assign breaking a letter A. Then we go to the second line. We have to decide, does vain rhyme with breaking? And in this case, it does not, so we have to give vain the letter B. Then we go to the third line, aching. We have to determine, does aching rhyme with breaking? Does aching rhyme with vain? In this case, we know aching rhymes with breaking, so aching should get a letter A. Then we go to our fourth line, pain. What does it rhyme with? If you said vain, you are correct. So our pattern here, or our rhyme scheme, is A, B, A, B for our first stanza. We continue with this similar fashion throughout the poem. The speaker of a poem is not necessarily the author. The speaker is the voice that relates to the story or the ideas of the poem. The speaker could have a dialect, which is a form of language spoken in a certain place at a particular time with a particular group of people. It can also have an idiom, which is an expression that is used by a certain group of people or in a certain location. If you take a look, here's a poem, The Writer by Naomi. Now you may be thinking that the speaker is the author Naomi, but it's not. If I read a little bit of it, a boy told me if he roller skated fast enough, his loneliness couldn't catch up to him. The best reason I ever heard for trying to be a champion. What I wonder tonight, pedaling hard down King William Street, is if it translates to bicycles. Based off that third stanza, one of my clues is that the speaker is a bicyclist. And he is thinking back to a time period when a boy on roller skates talked to him. Authors also use sound in poem. This is where they have chosen and arranged words to create a sound. And there's several different forms of sound. One is rhyme. This is a repetition of similar sounds at the end of words. For example, flap and tap. Those words rhyme and they're at the end of words. Another sound is rhythm, which is also called meter. This is a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in each line. Repetition is also another sound word. This is where words, phrases, or whole lines are used to emphasize an idea or create a certain feeling. One familiar sound of repetition is alliteration. This is where you repeat a consonant sound. For example, splish, splash. In this two words, they repeated the S in both words. If you look a little further in the poem, it says flags fluttered and flapped. If you take a look, out of those 4 words, 3 of them use the same consonant, which is the letter F. Another sound word is onomatopoeia. It's a word that is used to create sound. So for example, whoosh makes you think of what type of sound? Imagery is also another element that is used to help us understand poems. These are words that appeal to our 5 senses, which are sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Not only does a poet use imagery, but they also use figurative language, which are words or phrases that help create pictures in the reader's mind, especially in a new way. These are some common figurative language you've probably seen before. A simile is comparing 2 items and it uses the word like or as. A metaphor is a direct comparison of 2 items, but it does not use the word like or as. Analogy compares 2 things that are not similar. Personification is when an animal or an object takes on human qualities. Throughout this unit, we are going to be reading poems. One thing I want you to understand is how to read a poem. We read a poem aloud several times. We're going to try to visualize what images the poem creates. Those are going to be clues to help us understand what the poem means. We're going to clarify words and phrases that stand out. We're going to try to figure out what is the speaker's view of life or experiences or attitudes and their perspectives. We're going to evaluate the poem's theme. What is the point or the message of this poem? And lastly, in order for us to grow in our understanding of poetry, we need to think about, what is the poem saying to me? Thank you for viewing this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you at the next class.